Thank you again, everyone, for joining. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're calling in from. This is one of our global meetups. So thank you, everyone, for joining, for being here today for our low-touch, high-tech, innovative solutions to enhance the guest experience webinar, hosted by Guesty. As a quick just housekeeping right before we jump into it, a few reminders. We already sorted out the audio issues here, but don't forget you are automatically muted and we can't hear you, but you can click on the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen through your Zoom window to submit any questions. You can also, it's a new feature, because Zoom's still rolling them out, even though we're 2022 now, love it. You can upvote questions that have been asked by other audience members to let them know you really want those to get answered. And we'll most likely prioritize those because, that's the society we live in. So go ahead and submit those questions, or if you can't think of one, see if there's any that you're particularly interested in throwing a vote on it. If you want to leave early or something comes up, an emergency that you need to leave for, we will be recording this session and emailing it after the session is over. So no worries if that comes up. All right. With that being said, I'd like to quickly introduce myself with my favorite headshot I've ever taken in my entire career. And Guesty always uses this for our events because I look like a used car salesman. I'm Keegan. I'm the Director of Customer Success for the Americas and our APAC region as well for Guesty. And with me today are three of our panelists, both from two of our marketplace partners that are integrated with Guesty, as well as one of our customers. So with me is Ryan from Akia, which is a messaging platform that allows for specifically catered 5-star guest experiences. He's the COO of Akia. We have Isabeau, who's the president of Beacon Homes, a property management company headquartered in Nashville, but quickly growing across the East Coast. They've actually been with Guesty since 2016 and grown a good amount during that time and are continuing to grow, really getting into some exciting growth in this year and what's upcoming. And then lastly, we have Thomas with us, the head of product for DACK, which is an all-in-one guest experience solution catered specifically to short-term rentals. So thank you everyone for joining us today. I'll probably be thanking you more and more as the presentation goes on, but as a quick overview of our agenda, I want to go ahead and start with just sharing some of Guesty's data that we found from the past year. We always like to just kind of provide our insights that we're seeing based on customer data, other insights that we're ingesting all the time. And then we'll go ahead and give each of our panelists here a little bit of time to share kind of their take on the most innovative solutions they feel in the marketplace, whether those are their own or ones that they are utilizing for running their business, all in the effort to enhance the guest experience. And then lastly, of course, we'll have our live panel discussion with the Q&A featured questions or some pre-baked questions for our panelists. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in with some of the data that we found. So first and foremost, I want to talk about kind of this rise of the workcation that we're continuing to see following 2020. So we've seen in 2021, US bookings for extended stays of 14 days or more have grown by 23% compared to 2020 and cumulatively rising since 2019 of 121%. The reason I wanted to highlight this specific statistic is because we're starting to see a little bit of a change in how consumers are thinking about how they travel. Previously, what may have been, saving up your 2 weeks of PTO for one big vacation in the Caribbean to just shut off entirely, or a quick weekend here, a quick weekend there, is starting to change a little bit, where someone wants to go somewhere to stay, not just to relax and enjoy kind of a more vacation mode, but also stay a little longer and get some of their work done instead of being completely off the clock and enjoy a new area. We're expecting to see this trend continue further in 2022 as a lot of companies are continuing to allow remote work as time goes on. So we're excited to see this kind of new persona of traveler grow and develop as the year goes on. Next here, we always like to take a look at what's the next upcoming season and kind of how are we looking in terms of reservation data at this point compared to previous years. So even though it may be a little too soon to get excited in March, we do have the summer season coming up, or in LA, as I like to call it, summer number 3, because it's always summer here. And what we're seeing right now at this point is reservations across the globe are actually a lot higher than they have been in years past at this point. In certain cases, double-figure increases, as we've seen in 2021 and before. For example, in the US, we're seeing reservation volume for the summer months 98% higher than it was at this point in 2021. 222% higher than 2020. I don't know if something happened in March of 2020, but that might be why that number is a little aggressively higher. But even 76% higher than 2019 before the pandemic, which is extremely, extremely impressive. In the UK, 91% higher at this point than 2021, 4% higher than 2019. And even in Australia, where we're actually kind of going into the winter months there, we're seeing a 25% higher reservation volume right now than 2019 before the pandemic. So like I said, doesn't matter if it's summer or winter, all around the globe, people are renting more than they've ever done before, which is very, very exciting. So in addition to kind of all these statistics that we're seeing, an increased desire to travel, an increased desire to stay longer, a lot of guest expectations are changing in post-pandemic, that we're seeing just a couple extra precautions and really just less human contact, whether it's for safety concerns or just social anxiety in general, as some people might not prefer to interact with people. This aligns with kind of our tech-forward property managers providing contact-free experiences with things like keyless entry systems, digital concierges, and other tools that that allow them to manage their team's tasks remotely. Automated messaging tools are also becoming very, very crucial to communicating information like check-in and check-out instructions, of course, but additional automated messages just to make sure that you're not having to be at your computer or on your phone 24 hours a day answering every single question that your guests have, because we might quickly lose our minds if we didn't sleep. And then, of course, we have safety and cleanliness practices. It's still some local restrictions regarding COVID. Flexible cancellation policies that we're still seeing some customers desire just due to uncertainty in planning. And then, of course, as we mentioned before, with this rise in the workcation, work-friendly facilities. So making sure that a guest knows that your space is not just for relaxing and disconnecting, but can also be for working should they choose to operate that way. Of course, with all these growing needs, you kind of do need a main hub for all of this. So we found our users have been able to answer all these elevated guest expectations with help from third-party partners within our marketplace. As I mentioned, two of which are joining today. So even in the Guesty ecosystem, we're chock full of solutions that enhance the guest experience, simplify operations, and maximize revenue. So that's enough from me. I want to go ahead and hand it over to our first guest speaker here, which is Ryan from Akia. So Ryan, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen here and hand it over to you. But thank you all for listening to my whole intro spiel.
All right. Good morning, everyone, or afternoon, depending on where you are. Thanks for joining us here today. So, if you're anything like me, you're probably very familiar with these red badges on your phone, especially with your emails. And unfortunately, this is the reality for your guests as well. In today's world, everyone is constantly bombarded with emails, and oftentimes busy folks like all of us here, we're just skipping email altogether. People are not really, up to date and keeping up with reading their emails anymore. So if you're looking to engage your guests, email isn't necessarily the most modern technology anymore. So there have been studies that have shown that vast majority of people are checking and reading their text messages within the first 5 minutes of receiving them, compared to the 2.6% click-through rate of email. We have seen from our own Akia's data that our click-through rate is 18% higher than that of email, which is 46%. And that is incredibly high compared to just industry standards. And while text messaging isn't necessarily a new medium of communication, but we feel that it is currently the best channel for communication, especially for businesses that are looking to drive more meaningful conversations with their customers. And this is even more applicable to property managers and operators who are wanting to be always in touch with their guests. People of all ages prefer to communicate using messaging, whether that's text messaging or other messaging platforms out there. It's upward of 75% for those between the age of 18 and 44. So, ultimately people just love texting. And now you might think, hey, I'm actually based in Europe or South America. No one actually uses SMS here or texting here. But that's okay, because there is actually another messaging channel that is very, very popular and is as heavily penetrated as SMS in those continents. And that's WhatsApp, which is a channel that we also support in terms of guest communication. Upwards of 80% of people in the UK, use WhatsApp on a day-to-day basis. And that number is even higher for a country in South America like Brazil, where they see upwards of 90+% of market penetration. So the question here is, should property managers and operators use text messaging and WhatsApp just to communicate with their guests? And the answer for that might be, both a little bit of yes and no. Because if you're just doing simple text messaging, it might look something like this, right? And it's boring, it's not engaging. So messaging itself is just a delivery vehicle for information, but it's the when and the how of presenting that information that will drive meaningful engagement and meaningful conversations with your guests. So you want a messaging platform that is more comprehensive, where it can also manage and automate a lot of your guest journey and your guest relationship throughout their stay. And so at Akia, we have developed the technology called mini apps. These mini apps are beautiful and engaging app-like experiences for your guests, and these can be delivered to your guests all through text messaging or WhatsApp. And you as a property manager can quickly build and customize these mini apps via our simple editors, where you can just drag and drop and put everything together. We think that if you can write an email, you can most definitely build mini apps on our platform. So these mini apps are session aware, so we know who's opening them. We can dynamically pull in reservation or unit information into it. So even if you have, a 400 units that you're operating, you only really need to create one mini apps for each use case. And some of those use cases might be, you can build a digital rental agreement where you put in all the appropriate guest and reservation information dynamically, and then send it over to your guests via text messaging. Or you can also build out these gorgeous digital guidebooks where you share unit-specific information that we are able to pull from property management systems like Guesty. The guest book itself can contain all types of information, whether that's key code on how to get into the unit, or even just information about where to park when you get there. As I mentioned, fully personalized, depending on the guest and the unit that they're in. So now, you have the content that you want to share. You want to be able to automatically engage and share these information with them. So on top of our mini apps, we also have an amazing toolkit that allows you to plan your guest communication journey and control when and who receive those messages and information. The messaging cadence could be defined by you. So for example, you can automatically send that rental agreement that you have created immediately upon booking. Or, you also have the flexibility to layer on different conditions as well. So for example, you might want to share that digital guidebook that contains the key code and instructions on how to get into the unit to guests who have actually completed and sign your rental agreement first. So having a communication platform that works for you is important. Rather than attending to administrative tasks like these, such as, emailing reminders to guests to get them to sign your rental agreement, compiling a bunch of notes to send to them about all the specifics and quirks of the units and making sure that they can get into the house, you can build out, a fully automated guest journey that will handle a lot of these time-consuming tasks for you. So then you can really truly focus on giving a great guest experience to your guests and visitors. And just some statistics that I want to share with you all. These are just from some of our property managers and what they're seeing. We work with a property who's seeing, above 90% of their rental agreements being completed within the first 8 hours after booking, which is quite phenomenal. We're seeing a number of properties where, the guest engagement rate is 93%. Guests are communicating with them over text messaging. This could be anything from simply asking questions prior to their arrival to reporting that something like their refrigerator is broken in the unit. And then we even have one property who reported that they saw an increase of 142% in positive reviews after they started servicing their guests over text messaging and then sending them review links over text messages as well. So here's just some quick testimonies from our happy customers, but I'll just quickly breeze past this slide. But really there are two key takeaways for you today. One is, you want to meet where your customers are, and where they are right now, especially in the modern times, is through messaging platforms, right? So whether that's texting or WhatsApp, these are key for your guest engagement and key for providing great services. And then two, great communication means that you can automate a lot of the common daily tasks away. So again, you can truly focus on servicing your guests and giving them that amazing experience for staying with you. And then if anyone's interested in learning more, feel free to reach out to us. Be sure to mention my name in this meetup. And if you do sign up, we'll waive 50% off the onboarding fee for you guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ryan, for kind of walking us through some of that automation that really allows property managers to be a lot more guest-centric with that added time that they have there. Thanks so much. Next up, I want to kind of invite Thomas here from DACK to come to the stage, as it were, and go ahead and walk through some strategies that just help hosts digitize their property from keyless entry to any upsells that enhance the guest stay. So Thomas, take it away.
Thanks, Keegan. Thanks for having me. Thanks, everyone, for being here. So we're going to talk about what DACK does and continue this topic of digital guest experience. So DACK is a mobile-first guest experience platform. We help you achieve this through an intuitive guest application that you can control and manage from a powerful operator portal. So on this topic of digital guest experience, what we know today with consumers and guests in general is guests are mobile, right? Your guests want and expect a mobile experience, and they're on their phone 24/7, 365. How do we know this? We know this from our data, and we know this from industry data as well. So we talk about industry data. 81% of the global population uses smartphones. On average, people are on their phone about 4 to 5 hours a day. For some people, it's more, like me. Skift just put out a great report recently about mobile experience in travel. And one of the stats that they found was 70% of last minute bookings are done on a mobile device. We also know that when people are traveling to an airport or to a destination, if they're using a ride share or they're getting a ride, it's 72% of the time they're going to use Uber or Lyft. We know that at airports, the number one method now, the preferred method for check-in is a mobile phone. We know that when they get to a hotel or an accommodation, they want to check in. with the mobile phone. And we know this because companies like Hilton have spent close to $1 billion on digital key and mobile technology. And we know that when they're staying somewhere, they're on their phone. And we know this because right around 80% of people are likely to share their vacation on social media. And that number actually climbs to as high as 97% for millennials and Gen Zers. So what we know is from booking to getting there to staying there, they're on their phone and they're engaged with their phone 24/7, 365, right? So we also know this because every major brand, whether it's Marriott, Sonder, Vacasa, Vrbo, or Hilton, has spent a lot of money and time building out these mobile apps that guests are expecting. And they're kind of setting the bar and raising the bar for all of the other short-term rental and smaller hotels to provide some sort of digital experience to their guests. And we know this even in the STR space with brands like Inspirato, Kasai, Avantstay, One Fine Stay, and Mint House. They all have spent millions of dollars on mobile-first technology. So how do you stack up against these larger brands, right? And what are you providing to your guests? Is it something that they expect? So are you providing an old binder that you have to change frequently and print out when details change? Are you providing a tablet or TV monitor or medium that they're not necessarily used to? Are you providing a super long email? This is an actual email from a friend of mine. He sent it to me and he's like, you got to check out this email. This is why people need a guest experience technology. And this was all the instructions that operator sent them about how to get into the unit and where to park and everything. So just crazy what the industry standard was at. And I think we all know that there's a gap in technology in this space. So what does DACK provide? DACK provides a start to finish comprehensive mobile experience, right? So we provide everything from check-in to digital key engagement or digital key integration with a variety of digital locks. We provide one-touch Wi-Fi, the ability to add a guest or a family member or friend. You can create a fully customizable digital guide with all the property info, videos, instructions, all that. And this really helps curb the amount of calls and questions that your staff has to handle every day. You can offer customizable stay upsells. And this is a really important part of the guest experience. So you can create incremental revenue for your property. And guests really want to engage with this. I'll get to some stats on that in a second. You can provide local guide information that you can customize or we can dynamically populate. You can provide smart tech controls for things like the TV or lights, thermostat, etc. And more importantly, you can provide that direct booking link back to your site, which is becoming increasingly popular as people try to get more and more direct bookings. And then lastly, you have your checkout flow where you can capture feedback and review as the guest exits your property. So the question is will guests download and engage with an app or digital technology in general? And the answer is resoundingly yes. Operators can exceed 100% download rates depending on their messaging configuration and property optimization, right? So this property here on the left, they're in Los Angeles, or this company on the left is in Los Angeles. They have right around 170 properties. Some of them have digital locks, some of them don't. They're seeing about an 85% download rate. And if you look at this chart, I can kind of explain it, but they're seeing about the primary guests right around 80% participation rate. And then that primary guest is adding additional guests at about a 10 to 15% rate. And so their average is about 85% of registrations to reservations, right? For the operator here on the right, they actually have digital keys on all their units and guests are using the app at 120% rate. And the way we get to this number is the primary guest is using the app at about 100%, and 20% of the time they're adding a friend or family member. So that operator is getting about 1.2 registrations per stay, and that's great data that they can export and then remarket to for direct bookings, et cetera, and import into their CRM. So as compared to the industry, DACK's mobile app solution engagement is very high, right? So this chart here compares us to some of the bigger brands that you guys might know and might be competing with on search engines. And so DACK has about 76% of the market share for new users compared to these competitors or your competitors. And 77% of the time spent on the app is with DACK right now, up against these five. And then another note on engagement is day one retention. So this means that people download the app, register, and then come back to the app in the same day. And on that stat, we're actually the leaders industry-wide on STR apps, which really just means for you, you can compete with the big guys, right? You can offer a tech and a solution and experience that's competitive with the largest brands out there. So what we see is guests are engaged from booking to post-checkout, right? So all the way after their stay, you can continue to stay engaged with them. But we see guests download the app right around 31 days ahead of check-in. And on average, we see about 7.2 interactions per stay. So they're engaged and they have this great window. You have this great window as an operator to market to that guest, offer them upsells, offer them details about their stay for about 31 days before check-in. And during that window, they're more than willing to purchase extras to enhance their stay. So our top operator had about 47 upsells last month. This is right around an upsell per door that operator was using. And so DACK for them is more than paying for itself, obviously. Our largest upsell last month was $2,800, and our average upsell is right around $93. So yeah, guests are definitely willing to enhance their stay. They see it as a benefit, not necessarily as a marketing thing, and they actually enjoy this feature of the app a lot. So we try to make everything as automated as possible for you as an operator. We don't want you to do extra work just to make extra money. And so one of the things we do is a lot of automation between the digital logs, communication, and upsells with the guest. An example workflow here is workflow number 2, for example. The guest can request early check-in. You get an email that says, hey, Keegan wants to stay at unit 208 and check in 2 hours early. Do you approve or decline? You can approve it from your inbox. Once you approve it, the digital key is automatically updated. Keegan's credit card gets charged, and he can check in early, 2 hours early at that unit. So really a lot of incremental revenue without extra work is the core focus. So overall benefits for guest experience technology, really being market competitive. I highlighted that a lot with, what the competitors are doing, the big brands are doing, and where they're setting that bar. It's a great way to boost owner confidence. You can tell them, hey, we provide this digital experience to our guests. We're different than other operators. You should go with us. It's a great way to capture more feedback and get insight into the guests. It's a great way to boost revenue. And we do a lot with direct bookings as well. So we try to offer coupon codes, direct booking links wherever possible. And we offer that data that you can market back to the guests. And then more importantly, you free up staff and have cost savings. So with IoT automation, things like that, as well as just that digital guide, your staff should just generally be getting a lot less phone calls about things like dishwashers and hot tubs, and free them up for important things like how to best service the guest and provide a delightful experience. Some example testimonials, I can breeze through this again, but this company is really interesting just because it's a cabin and remote property owner that provides nature-oriented experiences. You wouldn't think of them as using mobile-first technology, but the way they see it is the mobile-first platform frees them up for everything else, enables them to provide that authentic guest experience that they're trying to drive for. So just to wrap it up here, mentioned the webinar, you get 2 free months plus 50% off boarding. Onboarding is pretty easy, it takes a few weeks, and you can coordinate with our customer success team. And that's it for me.
Awesome. Thank you, Thomas. It's awesome to see how automation can really be implemented at every end of the spectrum in terms of size, so that a lot of these smaller operators can compete with the big dogs, as you put it. So next up, just to kind of round the panel out, we want to hear from someone who, instead of kind of providing one of these technological solutions, is actually implementing all of them into her day-to-day and actually utilizing them to operate her business. So I want to go ahead and hand it over to Isabeau here to kind of talk about Beck & Home's tech stack and how they're operating as a property manager as in a kind of the automated space, as it were. So Isabeau, go ahead and take it away.
Great. Thanks, Keegan. Thanks for having me. So these guys have told you what they do. I want to kind of give you an example of how you might do it as a property management company. Beck & Homes, we are based in Nashville. We are expanded into 4 other markets at this point and expanding into markets at a rapid pace. We're slated to do about $5 million in revenue this year. We have over 20 full-time employees. And we're really a people company that utilizes technology. Our goal is to provide luxury services, whether that's in operations, in hospitality, in furnishing of properties for investors, or helping them plan where they're going to expand to next. So what we need in a tech stack, we really have 4 different areas that we are focused on. The first is hospitality, because at the core of this industry, as much as can be automated and should be automated to really leverage your time, is hospitality. If you're not servicing your guests and your guests aren't happy, then it's going to be much, much harder to succeed. Operations, if any of you have been doing this for any amount of time, you know the second that a cleaner calls in sick or a pipe freezes, that you need an operations tech stack for sure. If you are managing properties for other owners, you know that you need to have some kind of system, as complex or simple as it may be, to communicate with them. And lastly, as you start growing your property management operation, you will need some ways of managing your team and making sure that everybody is functioning and pulling on the same side of the rope. So hospitality, if your guests aren't happy, nobody's happy, right? So Guesty is who we've chosen to partner with. We have vetted, and Keegan knows very well, we have vetted and vetted and vetted and vetted all the PMS companies. And ultimately we found that Guesty is a great fit for what we need in a partner. We use Price Labs as a dynamic pricing solution. There are lots of great, amazing players and people out there. And then we'll talk a little bit about the other services that we utilize as we go through these slides. Obviously, Guesty, I'm sure a lot of you are already familiar with, as we're all here because of Guesty being brought together today. But it's been such a great solution for us for a number of reasons. Number one, the amount of integrations that they have, being able to integrate with companies like Ryan's and Thomas's, and but also have a place to see centralized data, see what's coming, what's happening, where your gaps are, where the voids are, and having one centralized inbox to make sure that all of your guests have been tended to has really been the most probably crucially important part of our business. Next, Price Labs. If you've entertained any pricing software, you know how important it is to really capitalize on these voids. As you can see, we've got a lot built out in these little vacancies that should be filled, and we are able to go in and dynamically price things and of course put automations on them, but also have a broad overview of what we as people might need to do to best manage this integration and this automation. Lastly, or maybe not lastly here, but one of the big things for us has been shipped in Instacart, which is something that is not directly correlated to the STR space. But my friends, tell your guests that you have always got their back, and then download Shipped and Instacart. This is a really good example of a dishwasher breaking and our team saying, don't worry, you won't need to hand wash dishes during your stay. We're going to make sure we get you paper goods. And while we try not to do that for the sake of the earth, when you're in a pinch, it really works well. And we were able to remediate that guest experience by giving them a solution that they wouldn't have otherwise had, and without any of our team members having to run out to the grocery store at 10 o'clock at night. Then we started obviously as a full service property management company. What we realized very early on is the new expectation, as both of these presenters have alluded to today, is that they want 24/7 contact, but not unless they need it. So while we can automate as many things as possible, and we do, at the end of the day, if something fails on site, if they don't get a code, if a battery dies, if a smoke detector is chirping, your guest is going to, go crazy until they talk to an actual human. So we have just recently launched Beckon Calls, which is your 24/7, 365 Airbnb backend. So basically, when a guest needs to call and wake you up in the middle of the night, we're going to take that call for you so you're not woken up in the middle of the night. We were originally outsourcing this, and as we learned that we were going to have to do way more work to train an outside agent to do it, we started in-housing it just for our properties. And as we started developing, we realized this is a service really so many people, property managers and homeowners, would benefit from. So Beckon Calls is kind of the last piece of our hospitality stack. Then operations, again, once you've had a major issue at a property, you know how important it is to have an operations tech stack. We have vetted, again, many. We love both VR Scheduler and Breezeway. We've used them at different times in our company's life cycle for different reasons. Both give you really robust information. And I think it's really important to keep in mind as a property management company that nothing is ever going to be 100% what you want it to be. So you really, it's about finding the thing that's the 98% fit and then figuring out how to cushion that 2% that might not be perfect. And what I found with a lot of the companies we partner with is almost all of them are willing to take feedback, listen to it, and often integrate it. So don't be afraid of, kind of hunting people down and sharing your opinions with them. That's how they become a better product. And you are probably their most valuable market research tool. ClickUp has been a great new thing that we've integrated for multi-step projects. So things like VR Scheduler and Breezeway are great for a one and done. A guest comes, the property needs to be cleaned, it needs to be inspected, and then you're done with that task. But what happens if you have a leak? That's 3 or 4 different calls to the plumber, to the drywall guy, to the painter, to the owner. And ClickUp or a project management tool like ClickUp or Asana gives you the ability to assign tasks out to different members of your team, different people that you're using, and make sure everything gets done from start to finish. Brevo is the automated lock and technology system we've chosen to use at our properties. It allows us to grant access to different team members at different times of day. It allows us to manage our guest access and populate brand new codes for each guest so that they feel safe. Similarly, we've vetted a lot of different alarm systems and security companies, and Ring has a great property management dashboard tool, which is why we've chosen, where legal, check your local legislations and regulations, where legal, we use Ring as an alarm system and camera monitoring system. Owner communication. This is definitely a space where I think there's so much room for technology players to come and dominate. Guesty gives a great owner dashboard. What we found to be the hole there is that we're not able yet, I know it's coming, Keegan tells me,
very shortly.
I won't say he's made any promises, but we're not able yet to upload documents, which obviously as we're having invoices or monthly statements, that's something we need. So we're, old school, and we use Google Drive, which allows us to upload owner statements to their own personal folder. It allows them to easily compile information for their taxes for the following year. And makes our job a lot easier than like trying to track down a bunch of emails that were sent on a single day in a single month. And lastly, team management. We love Slack. Slack is like text messaging to the nth degree. It allows you to make channels that might correspond to different subject matter, different properties, and allows your team to come in and report issues as they're happening in real time, even though, of course, they can report issues through various other softwares that we utilize. There's no faster way to get everybody's attention than to put it in a Slack, because the whole team, depending on the time of day, is looking at it, watching it. And in these situations, a lot of times someone who you might not have reached out to naturally has the answer to something that you didn't think to ask them. So Slack has been great. And in conjunction with Slack, we started using Hey Taco, which is just a fun, silly reward system that allows us to incentivize people to do a great job and allows us to give out tacos, 5 tacos a day, to the shining stars that are making your job and your life easier. And at the end of every week, I look at who's gotten most tacos, and I'm able to, not only see how everybody's performing and maybe also feeling, but also reward them for the good stuff in an industry that is highly fraught with a lot of, challenges, and hearing mostly about the things that are going wrong. We don't get a whole lot of messages from a guest saying like, wow, this is the best vacation I've ever had, but we definitely hear about every scuff mark on the wall. So this allows us to really focus in on the positive and to stay in a happy place together. So if you need to find us, we're happy to help. Beck and Calls has just launched this month, so we're super excited about that. We're happy to talk to property managers as well as retail users, individual homeowners, about how we can help you service your guests with a Ritz-Carlton meets the neighbor next door experience. And so glad to be here today. Thank you all.
Thank you, Isabel. And I think I speak for everyone where I say I'm now craving tacos. So thank you for that. All right. I think we can kind of get the panel discussion started here. So I know we spent the entire morning here talking about automated solutions and kind of the wave of the future as it is. But I want to ask kind of each of our panelists here as a question for the entire group. From your experience, what do you see as some blockers, mental, budget-wise, whatever, that are preventing property management companies from digitizing their properties and investing in those tech tools?
As a property management company, I think one of the biggest blockers is if something does or doesn't integrate, and the ability to how seamlessly it will integrate. Because for a management company our size to have to go into a system and spend weeks and weeks and weeks updating that system with our information, it's very time consuming. It's almost a full-time job for one of my staff members. So especially when something can feed in to their system, what we've already spent a long time building out in Guesty, for instance, that's a huge determining factor for us.
Yeah, I would say what we see, I think the most is like this industry, there's some collaboration with the larger operators, but there's not as much collaboration with these like smaller, newer guys that are popping up. And I think people kind of get stuck in their ways or stuck in a particular mindset that might only be true from a very small sample size that they've heard, anecdotally. I think one of the ones we hear a lot is upsells, not wanting to offer early check-in or just providing early check-in for free. And what we see in the data is guests are way more than willing to pay for early check-in and get into a unit early. And it's kind of like the Postmates rapid delivery thing. It's like, it's a no-brainer, right? But other operators will be like, this isn't how I work. And so I think if there's more collaboration, there's more panels like this, operators hear the data and see the stats and see what guests really want. There's a great opportunity to then adopt this digital experience that might be lacking today.
And from my end, excuse me, we hear a lot of, maybe it's more of a mental blocker, especially when it comes to, adopting a new technology. A lot of the sort of common things that we hear on the market is, oh, our guests are not tech savvy, so these complicated systems might not work for us. But time and time again, we've heard back from our customers that, after they rolled out, it's actually super successful, even for the older guests where they think, they might not be able to download an app or send text messages. They actually end up using all these technologies. We have, one of our customers share like a screenshot with us of their guests just randomly started texting them, sending them photos of their vacation, just talking to the property managers like it's their friends and family, all through sort of just, text messaging. So don't let, technology be this like scary thing that you're not willing to adopt, right? There's times are changing, and everyone, even no matter their age, are all pretty savvy these days.
Yeah, I think when my parents started using Instacart, I knew we were onto something for sure.
So quickly kind of drilling down into something you just said, Ryan, and mentioning that some people might have hesitancy or think that their guests might be hesitant to download an app or kind of be more digital. I see we had a question come in during some of the presentations from Bill in the audience. Shout out, Bill, for the question. What do you find are the advantages or disadvantages of using a downloadable versus a web app? Bill's asking, are guests less likely to download an app rather than just to follow a web link?
That's interesting because so for our platform, we do leverage web apps, which I kind of mentioned earlier. Those are the mini apps that property managers can easily build. And this might be dependent a little bit on the type of properties or the customer base that you're seeing. But obviously, the one sort of super big advantage of leveraging web apps, like like ours is, it doesn't require guests to download anything, which just quickly removes, one step to accessing that information.
Yeah, and I would say, I think what we've seen, I think this is kind of one of those examples of, operators anecdotally hearing this and the data not necessarily backing it up. And I think that's where, just digital experience in general, that's why Hilton spent $1 billion on this, right? That's why all these big guys offer it. That's what our own data has shown is people are willing and perfectly able to, register and use it, digital technology. And, I think what we've seen, and I showed some of the data earlier is near 100% participation rate for operators that message it and communicate it the right way. And it's all about the communication, which Ryan probably would agree with here is, it's how you say it. And so we say stuff like, hey, looking forward to having you. What if you'd like to enhance your stay, schedule a personal chef, check in early, anything like that, download and register on the app. Benefits of registration is obviously you get the guest data. And then you have this engaged audience that has that app on their phone. You can send them push notifications throughout their stay, and they can kind of continue to use that app after their stay as well at other locations. So I think you just have a more engaged audience, but I think both web and app downloaded apps are perfectly valid ways to offer guest experience.
Awesome. Thanks for answering that question for Bill. I want to kind of hop over to Isabeau here, because I know we were talking about what are some hangups of property managers from leaning in a little bit more to automation. But some of those concerns I think we kind of touched on are just fear of losing that personal touch that only kind of a human can provide. You kind of mentioned this with discussing back in calls, how there are certain instances where someone's just smashing zero on the phone until they speak to an operator because they can't deal with an automated system. So what are some of the more seemingly obvious things that you see that many property managers forget to think about when it comes to the guest experience that they should kind of keep in mind even as they are automating a lot of their workflows?
Well, I think one of the most important things to keep in mind, and one of the things we try to keep in perspective, is that for us, we host, 30,000 guests a year. But for that guest, this may be their only vacation this year. So for them to not have access to the information that they need via automations, via technology, in a way that is digestible for them, is super frustrating, and maybe as frustrating as not being able to talk to a person when you need a person. So I really think, what's important for people to realize is it may seem inconsequential to you, but it's never inconsequential to your guests. And the more that you can understand that, especially with the conditions of the last few years, that these people are, some of them are seeing their family for the first time in several years. Some of them are traveling for the first time in several years. And it's really our job, whatever sector of the industry we're in, tech or, property management, anything else, our focus should be on what do the people need the most right now. And I think people do need instant access to information that is provided by automations like these guys are providing, like super awesome technology. And they also need someone to hold their hand sometimes and say, okay, you can turn the water heater up in the garage. And, so I think it's really striking that balance. And, so property managers need to pay attention to both if they're going to be successful.
Yeah,
awesome.
I think
go ahead, Thomas. Yeah.
I was like, I think the way we see it is technology frees up staff, right? It's definitely not replacing them. We definitely have operators that want everything completely automated and just want to check out, and it's like, it's not a robot replacing you. This is tech that assists you and enables you to then not have to answer specific questions, but just provide a great experience overall, I think.
Yeah, I mean, to me, no one on my team should ever have to be answering the question, what is the code to get in the door?
Yeah.
Unless for some reason that's failed. I mean, that should be automated. They should never have to answer the question, how do I use a TV? I mean, those we call it, the low hanging fruit. That should all be automated. It should all be easy. We shouldn't have to think about it. They shouldn't have to think about it. What we should really be doing at the end of the day is emotion management and not like property management. So I think that these guys make it really easy to manage the property and the vacation and the travel. And we then get to manage the people and get to connect with them on a human level.
Awesome. So as we're kind of talking about that balance between the human experience and the automated workflows that we're rolling out, I want to kind of, as a group, take a look into the future a little bit. Not too far in the future, not like Jetson's level future, but just 5 years down the line. What are some technological solutions you think may emerge, or that you're hoping to see emerge, to kind of close some of these gaps in the guest experience between where you really do today need that human element, or just something that takes a manual effort as opposed to automation? What are some kind of blue sky ideas that you guys have had in kind of the upcoming 5 years that you'd like to see?
From maybe like more of a messaging standpoint, I can foresee that, messaging platforms becoming more and more important. And we already see this right today in the Western markets, in US in particular, with platforms like, Facebook Messenger. We probably do communicate with all of our friends and family through all these different messaging channel. But I think we're still a little behind in terms of business messaging. If you take a look at the Chinese market, they have WeChat, which is crazy over there. Like, consumers can literally do everything through chatting with friends and family, all the way to transacting with the business, all through this messaging platform, right? And so we know that there is so much more that we could do in terms of leveraging, the human connection, as Isabel mentioned, in terms of how people interact and how businesses interact with all their customers around them. So I can foresee that this becoming sort of more and more of a thing over here as well, probably over the next 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think it's becoming a have to have, not a nice to have, right? Just guest tech in general. And, to Ryan's point, like geographically, some of the stats that there's a great Skift report about this on just mobile technology and travel and lodging that just came out. But the stats from the Southeast Asia market, direct bookings on mobile devices is like 80 to 90% versus here in the States, where it's a little bit lower, like at 70%. So I think it's not going away. I think it's going to increase. I think what we're trying to do is everything to be as, close to automated as possible, and give you the ability to offer, the digital experience without, overcoming these hurdles on onboarding and stuff like that. But I definitely see this becoming, just completely commonplace everywhere you go. And I kind of thought about that, that future question is, like, if you imagine yourself in 2030, you're definitely not going to the front desk at a hotel to get a plastic key card, right? Like, there's going to be another way to get into that unit and communicate with the front desk in 5 to 10 years.
Yeah. And for me, I see two really distinct voids in the industry, and very, very interested in, number one, seeing what happens, number two, potentially being a part of it. I think, a lot of these conversations and a lot of these integrations kind of ignore the element of the property management company and client relationship. We talk a lot about guest management and a lot about what guests need, and we don't talk a lot about our clients, who honestly, those are some of the most important relationships in my life. And so if I had an ability to better communicate with them, make sure that every time their property is serviced, they know about it. I mean, we've done the math, and on average, our team is touching a property 7 times a week. And I think most of our owners don't understand the care and time that goes into that. I think if there was a way to integrate some of these operations platforms with an automatic, ping to our owners, like, hey, we just did this and you should be really happy about that. Or like, we'll let you know what else needs to be worked on. And I think that would be huge. I think the accounting of all of it is really a really big opportunity, because right now, if you don't have an in-house team, then there isn't a system. There isn't a technology that seamlessly integrates with all the variables that might play out of, who gets this and who gets that. And then the other piece is, providers. At the end of the day, labor and workforce is a huge thing, and that can't always be automated. The tasks can be automated, but if you don't have anyone picking up the tasks, then it doesn't matter, and you'll just have a backlog, a million miles long. So I know there are companies that have come and have had varying levels of success, Tackle and TaskRabbit in different markets, but I think that the industry is really ripe to have a competitive solution, and especially with the Great Resignation and folks, being more freelancers, having a short-term rental marketplace of someone who's willing to inspect a property to make sure it was clean or restock it or, fix something or paint something. I think that would be just a gigantic game changer for most operators.
And then eventually robots would be stepping in that.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know how a robot was going to change a toilet paper roll, but it might happen. Who knows?
You just got to believe. That's the key.
I have all the faith.
Awesome. Well, I know we are at time here, a little over, but just as one kind of last plug here for any of our attendees in the crowd right now, if you enjoyed this panel and are interested in kind of seeing some more panels like this, getting to meet other property management operators across the country, across the globe even, Guesty is having our conference Guestival this year in September. Traditionally, we've actually been able to host this conference in Israel, in Tel Aviv, but given everything going on in the world right now, we thought it might be better to do in the United States this year. So we're going to be going to Austin. I've pitched this to users as the good parts of Coachella meets a professional work conference, because it's if I just say Coachella, people go with, the bad parts of Coachella. So it's a great opportunity to meet a lot of people in the space, meet a lot of our partners that are integrating with Guesty and providing their own solutions alongside ours. So right now you can head over to guestival.com to buy tickets. We do have a ticket price increase coming on April 1st. So this is kind of our last stretch here for the early bird pricing for the tickets. We'd love to have you there. And thank you all so much for joining today. Thank you again to our panelists. And if you have any other additional questions that came up or you felt didn't get answered today, as we were trying to do our best to answer in the Q&A, feel free to reach out to meetup@guesty.com. Check out guesty.com/events for more virtual meetups. And as I said before, we will be sending out a recording of this presentation as well. But thank you everyone so much, and have a good rest of your day.